and it also has the word algorithm. So I looked up the summary of the invention, which usually is a very pleasant piece to see because it's clever lawyering, but not here. It's great. It's simple, plain, perfect case for a lawyer. You see it, you know you're going to get it, and you get very excited. And so I see, and I look at it, and I read. It says, in one aspect, there is provided a method of compressing a digital signature of a message. The signature comprising a pair of signature components are S, the method comprising obtaining a pair of values CD related mathematically to S, and with one of the values being smaller than S, substituting the one value for the signature component S in the digital signature and forwarding the signature to a recipient. I don't know how many are mathematicians, or I'm sure all of us, being from India, didn't use the till. You know enough math to do this. And this is what will come out of it. I don't think this is very clear. I'm sorry, I don't know if this is very clear, but this is a PDF clipped out of what was filed in the patent office. This is actually the figure which was filed. I can read it out for you. It says, the signer 12 would generate R, S and M, derive D, substitute S with D, and then compute D is equal to H into M, W is equal to P plus RQ, take out a log, and obtain this value, verify if desired, and I want a patent on it. And a similar figure with a different equation with value of C is being calculated, and that's the patent they want. Do you know who this person is? Who's filed for it? It's filed by Centricom Corporation, which is a wholly owned subsidiary of Research in Motion, our favorite guys in BlackBerry. So what will we do? We will file oppositions. In fact, Software Freedom Law Center challenged this patent and has filed a pre-grant opposition already on this. We are hopeful, and hopefully this gets wherever it deserves to go, which is in here. But we will see what happens. Apart from filing oppositions, we wish to make some representations to the patent office. Approximately around 1,000 applications are filed every year, 1,000 approximately, which are covered by Section 3K, which I just showed you. And since the patent office is new, since the backlog is enough, at least 100 have already been granted in 1 year. I have still to do more research to come out with exact numbers. But we want to go and tell the patent office that this is what you're doing. This is not what the law says, and this is wrong. And if you're not going to do anything, it's fine. We're going to destroy one patent at a time, like we do everywhere else in the world. But if you want to listen to us, and if you don't want us to be bombarding you with applications and increasing your work, so better stick to what the law says. We're going to participate in the legislative or executive process. There was a draft manual which came. There's a manual which is going to be out. We talk to people who are responsible for this. If there is ever a legislation, I'm sure our friends would help us, and we will do something about it. We need to increase public awareness about these issues. This patent would cover anything under e-commerce. It talks about digital signature, certifying authorities. We need to increase how it's going to affect the public. This seminar is a part of a series of things which we are going to do. Then there will be the global coordination. There would be defensive patent pooling. So the patent system is here to stay. We expected the Supreme Court to do something about Bilski. The film is height of our optimism. But the Supreme Court decided not to do anything. Just sit. It's so easy to ignore every issue and just sit. It hasn't changed anything, but we just have to go on with our work. So we have to think about some innovative ways to beat the system. So we're going to play their game their way, and we're going to do some part of it our way, and a little part of it their way also. We're going to get into defensive patent pooling. We have partners in the cause. They're all here. Center for Internet and Society is a very, very well-established organization, and we have some great people from there here, and they're concerned. There are people who work for digital freedoms in the country, and they are putting everything, their heart and soul into it. There's Society for Knowledge Commons, which has been at it before we even got into this picture, and has done some great work. The Free Software Foundation is there. And then there is IMAC, which is the Initiative for Medicines, Access, and Knowledge. And then there is all of you. And we rely on all of your support and also these partner organizations to get whatever I laid out in the previous slide that we wish to do. There's a little thing, I don't really need to bog you down in the legalities of it, but just to tell you what a pre-grant opposition is, that a pre-grant opposition can be filed by any person. It is just a representation. It's not like a real legal document where you have filing fee or you have a specific kind of format to do it. So you can just file by way of opposition to the controller. You can even request for a hearing, and third parties can go ahead and do it. The examiner will consider the representation, and when the applicant requests examination of its application, and will take any representation into consideration, and will see what he thinks about parties who have made the pre-grant opposition. There is the post-grant opposition. Within 1 year of being granted, a patent can be opposed by a person interested. That definition is inclusive, and it usually relates to people who are doing research in the area, but there is no authority, there is no case law. Who are these people who can be filed, or who can file for post-grant, or who cannot file for post-grant oppositions? So we plan to do both. We want to use whatever the remedies our law provides to get our work done. There are 11 grounds which are same both for the pre and post-grant oppositions, including obviousness, wrongfully obtaining. We plan to use this very ground, which says the subject of any claim of the complete specification is not an invention within the meaning of this act, or is not patentable under this act. Since an algorithm, or computer program per se, or a business method, or mathematics are not inventions, as we saw in what Section 3 case is. So these are not patentable under the meaning of this act, and this is the ground we plan to use mostly. I also want to talk about life sciences, since this is about commons and not just software. So Evan Moglen sits also on the board of Public Patent Foundation. Our legal director, Dan Ravisher, runs the Public Patent Foundation. It's an organization which challenges these patents in the United States. Along with ACLU, they challenged the breast cancer gene patent recently. In 2004, we destroyed Pfizer's Lipitor patent. Lipitor, which was once the best-selling treatment for lowering of cholesterol. It was also the best-selling pharmaceutical product of any kind in the world. It's been destroyed now. Last week, we filed 8 patents for re-examination in the USPTO on ritonavir, which is marketed and distributed by Abbott Laboratories. It's an HIV and AIDS drug. IMAC, which I mentioned earlier, is also an organization which does oppositions for pharmaceutical patents. We plan to work with all these organizations and expand to life sciences as well. I mentioned the international trade law, and there is exclusivity there. It's dominated by one party, and the philosophy behind everything is that ownership equals innovation. There is hostile indifference to free and open source software, which means the collaborative commons model. What we want from the trade law is that there has to be positive legal recognition of free and open source software, free licensing, and business models at WTO. We said this in Beijing. We're going to say this in Paris. And there's, as I said, a budding coalition of BRIC countries who are coming together to actually get this enforced. We want them to recognize that the change is slowly coming. And they must recognize now it's going to be the law of innovation and not the law of property. There will have to be change in the role of standards. Open standards have to be adopted. Standards which have no constraints whatsoever for their implementation. We also are going to provide assistance in international cooperation on the deployment of free and open source software. All of these wonderful projects, the government wants to use them, people want to use them, everybody wants to understand what governments are usually told that you will be bogged down in procurement regulations if you try to move from the monopolies to free and open source software. That is an issue which we need to tackle. Third thing which we're doing in India is education and adoption. We want to educate people about these issues, about whether it's the usage of them, or creation of it, or distribution of it. In the last few months, we've seen Toyota calling back its cars. SFLC just published a paper by our General Counsel, Karen Sandler, who wears an implantable medical devices, how they are not regulated at all. Source code is never even told to the FDA. And India, very conveniently, there is no legislation on this, and says, there are vague legislations, we're still looking at this in India, and it says, we're going to do whatever FDA tells us to do. And so there is no requirement of the submission of a source code of an implantable medical device, which means you have a device inside you, but you do not know what it can do, if it fails, why it failed, or anything out of there, because it's supposed to be some kind of proprietary information. We've also seen the EVM machines issue which has come out in India. Also, although the entire ruckus about it was for something else, but we know exactly that what was the person who was arrested was trying to prove, that these are hackable machines and they're out there to hack your democracy. So whether we want to actually tackle these issues and talk about adoption of free software and get rid of these problems or not, this is something which SFLC is definitely concerned and plans to discuss as well as educate all parties who are interested or involved in this. Okay, so since I used a lot of pictures, most of them except one are distributed under CC by SA. So, but these are the resources in case you want to see it. You can talk to me and get these resources later. And that is all. Thank you so much for your time.